Welcome to the JAMODI podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is JAMODI, just a matter of doing it.
The JAMODI podcast is powered by Sideline Interactive. Sideline Interactive is the leading manufacturer for high-quality, innovative scoring tables and LED video display boards that help coaches and schools bring more excitement to fans, create huge fundraising opportunities, and make their jobs easier. Visit sidelineinteractive.com to check out their amazing products.
I think it's huge to spend time on that throughout practice. So that's where the idea of all practice is individual skill work. I think when you're teaching them how to play, especially in these small-sided games and reading advantages, man, that's skill work. And so you don't necessarily have to separate your skill work time with your team time. Man, I think you blend those two things together really well when you do that. One advantage we have as high school coaches in Texas, at least, and I say advantage, is no shot clock. Because theoretically, as a coach, you could run a set. Didn't work. Back it out. Let's try this. Didn't work. Back it out. Like you can keep just repeating in other states that are farther ahead in the game and at the college NBA level, you have your time. And so teaching them within those movements, the advantages you're trying to create to continue to look for gold, hunt for gold while you're running the play. Because if not, you go through all of this movement and you wind up with the ball in a guy's hand, like you said, too much space between dominoes. Oh, crap, 8 seconds. What does every team do? They either space away or they bring a guy and they get a ball screen. And most of the time, it leads to a contested jump shot. And I think that's where you can maybe reevaluate, okay, are these actions creating anything for us? Because all we're getting is a playmaker in space at the end trying to go one-on-one, or we're calling for a ball screen at the end. Or are they creating advantages? Our guys just aren't seeing them. And that's maybe where, film really helps with that. But I think as coaches, like you nailed it, man, us giving up control. Do we have to see this 4-part plan all the way through? Or are we allowed to take it at 1 or 2 if it's available for us?
And I think also it depends on your team a little bit. There are some teams that you have to create advantage for through sets, through action, through control. And that's not a bad thing. It's a personnel. Like, where is this guy the best? And there are some teams that are better when you let them create a little bit and get in the flow of things, whether it's a dynamicness or whether it's a read thing. You look at teams, Princeton teams, they are exceptional at using the action given to them to create an advantage. Those guys, some of them are not the quickest, not the fastest, most athletic, but what they do fits their skill set. And so even last year, a month into our season, like a month into games, we changed up what our triggers were because we have some guys that are better off of this action than I realized they're not quite as good off of this. So let's really emphasize these things and give them control to do that. But then also individually, we had a really fast point guard, 2 of them. And so if it was an end of clock, we'd say, all right, these guys don't need a ball screen. Let's just continue the flow of the offense, but let's give them space. Some of these other guys were really good reading off ball screens or really good off of gets. And okay, so this guy has the ball. This is an action that can play to their strengths. And so I think it's also team to team based on what they need to put them into the best position. And that's based off their skills, their athleticism, their IQ, their understanding, those things. And it can also change over time. It may be early in the year, they need more control because they're not fully understanding. But as they go, like last year, our guys started to get a lot more freedom and they really started thriving in it. And it helped them later to have more freedom because they had more understanding and IQ and it played to their skill set. So it's a moving target. I don't think there's any one answer for any one coach or team because your team at Grapevine could be really different next year in terms of what makes them really good than this year. And so that kind of continuum of control and freedom, it's like there's nothing set in stone in coaching.
Yeah. Full circle back to kind of what we started this talk off with is every year reevaluating. Like that was great for that year, but it's different now. And treating it like that, because it's so easy, man, just to I've got my practice plans from last year. I'm just going to copy and paste, and we're going to come out and do these things. I think you keep your practice plans for sure, but then when you copy them, okay, what's different? What adjustments can I make? I kind of go to a different direction here. You had mentioned in-game adjustments, and that is something that I don't feel like I'm very good at. I'm more of a Jason Garrett process, and got him a little bit in trouble at times. And I don't want me to get in trouble with it. But then those two words, comfort and familiar, I don't think I've ever thought about that before. Like, we want our players to be running something, standing in places where they're familiar and that they have a level of comfortability. But then we have to hold their feet to the fire to get more dynamic and execute, go faster through it. The Nuggets coach had a great clip where they were asking him about adjusting in game, especially in that particular game. And he looked at the camera, he's like, why would I adjust? Here are the two questions you got to answer. He says, are they going hard and are they executing? If they're not going hard or they're not executing, I don't need to adjust. We need to do those two things. If they're going hard and they're executing and it still doesn't work, all right, then we got to adjust. How do you go about in game making those adjustments? What are you looking for?
I think I really like the way he put that, because first you got to get the right personnel that are doing the right things on the court together. They got to be out there living, like you said, the foundation of things. If they don't have the effort, energy, focus, and our standards going, then we're going to get people out there who are. But I do think we go into games with multiple levels of a game plan and multiple adjustments based off of what the other coach does. Because I know that you go against great coaches every day. We go against great coaches, and they're going to have their own game plan. They may do something that you didn't even think of that they were going to do different. And so we like to go in having practiced and being comfortable with different things, whether it's we go in knowing we're going to start in this ball screen coverage. If that doesn't work, or they have this personnel package, we're going to go to this. And then in the back of my mind, I have, all right, if we need to adjust our lineup, or if we need something else, we can go to this. Or if this situation comes up, we can go to this. And I think that the adjustments part comes from those 10 hours that I talked about earlier, that we need to have thought through all those things, but those adjustments need to be things they're familiar with. So we don't do adjustments of things that are brand new, put in a press randomly late or, whatever. And even offensively, like I got better as a coach of saying, okay, here's our actions out of a timeout. What is something familiar I can do that looks different to play on how they're guarding this? We're used to running a flare out of this. Okay, so because they're chasing on the flare, what do we do? Or something similar, like, okay, we run a flare, let's just disguise the entry into it, but still get it into the same thing. And so I think that part of that comes from the simplicity of you guys understanding, do our guys know what all three of those ball screen coverages are and how to execute them well? And if so, then I think you can be really interchangeable. You can watch a game and we'll run 4 or 5 different ball screen coverages at different times, but they had to understand them all first. And so it allows us to be able to say, all right, starting now, we're in blue. Starting now, we're going to be in red. Or 4, you're going to white, 5, you're going to red. But it comes from a place of understanding. And I think that's our job as coaches, is to have the plan after the plan, because that's where I think that we show and build our competency to get them to be comfortable is, okay, so they did something different. That's okay. So we're going to do this. And that we're going to do this is something that they understand and know. And so one of the best, things that I had read, I don't even remember who it was. I'm terrible at attributing the smart people who I heard things from. But, look at your league. Look at the teams you're going to play. What do they do the most? And in building your practices and in building your offense, get your guys comfortable with going against that. We've been in leagues before where a lot of teams switched. And then we had leagues where teams were big, and so they went all drop coverage. And then now we have about half and half. We have some teams that hard hedge. We have some teams that drop. And so in building, in teaching from day one, let's make our guys comfortable in those things. So an adjustment isn't from something comfortable to uncomfortable. An adjustment is from comfort. And that takes a lot of preparation as a coach to be ready for those things, so that when you see your guys are uncomfortable because they're seeing a different package or different coverage, you can get them into that place of comfort off of an easy adjustment that they know. But I think you said it best, that if they're not doing the things that need to be natural, then none of the X's and O's matter.
Yeah. First we got to go to our teaching. Are they doing what we've taught them? And if they're not in games doing what they taught them, we can get mad at them. I mean, you do that all the time, but extreme ownership says you've got to turn that right back around, and you got to be really upset with yourself. I've been blamed for sticking with things like we ran a 3-2 zone the last couple of years, and maybe they're gaining a lot of advantages on us and really handling our pressure well. And I've been asked questions of like, why didn't you change? Why didn't you go man? Why didn't you do something else? I think I fall back into those two questions. Like, are we going hard? Like, are we flying around like we're supposed to? And then are we executing? Are we actually dropping and filling the way that we're supposed to? And if we're not doing that, then, maybe a little stubbornness is necessary, maybe in that moment. Because I think you got to be careful not just to change, because you might end up killing your run that could have continued on even further because we're trying to be a smart coach and just change things up. So I think that's maybe where the art of it is adjusting for the right reasons. And then to your point, be careful if you only have one way to do something. Because if you only have one way to do something and it fails, then you're trying to teach something new on the fly. And that comfort and familiarity, when that goes out, man, you can see it in the other team. They don't like what they're doing. I think that's huge.
Yeah, I agree. And, even zone is a great point, because I've worked for a bunch of coaches who are some of the best man defensive coaches. And every year, including myself last year, say, all right, we need to zone in to be like a pace changer and to, do some things, different and throw some people off. And, it's so easy for us to, the first time we have a possession and we give up a 3 when we're in zone, to just get right out of it. This is why I don't run zone, get back to man. But honestly, if it's the right 3 from the right person, you did your job and you play percentage it. If that guy,
we keep going.
Great. I hope you shoot that again. Or like you said, it could be an execution thing. Say, hey, you got to get out to the corner. And if you do that, then maybe we had them in a good position for what we wanted. Yep. And that's a hard balance, because like you said, there is a point to pull the plug. There's a point to go back to something different. And that's the hard feel thing that you'll get right one time, wrong 3, whatever it is. And that part's hard. And that's where I think the preparation comes in of, all right, why am I going to make this change? What are my changes that I can go in and be ready for? And then why would I make that change? What do I see, whether it's from our side or their side, that's going to make me do that for the right time, the right reason? And if we do that, I think most of the time we stick to what our guys are good at and we get a positive outcome, whether it's a win or loss, doesn't matter. It's putting yourselves in the best position. And so I think that's where that prep comes in, and knowing what you do and what your team does best.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the JAMODI podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.